Riddle me this. So you find a new content creator that you really, really love, but you think they're underrated. So you start to big them up and other people do the same. And you start to fill the comment section with stuff like, OMG, you're so underrated. OMG, you should have a gazillion followers. You're going to be huge. This is going to be viral. Coming back when it's viral, commenting for the algorithm. And it works. Algorithm does its thing. The channel grows, sometimes rapidly. And the results could be that that creator quits their day job to focus on YouTube more. Their lifestyle changes. They get more money, more affluence. Their lifestyle is elevated. They're less accessible because where they once had 5 DMs a day, they might have 50 or 500. And all of a sudden, they're labeled as unrelatable. Make that make sense. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Hope you're good, hope you're well, hope you like my hair. Jokes. Details in the description. Okay, so I've been seeing this a lot lately. This topic of influencers and relatability and like them losing their relatability. It's been in the drafts for a while, I can't lie. It's been there ever since I did my parasocial relationships video. And then my good sis, she doesn't know who I am, but my good sis, Jackie Aina, she recently did a video on this. And I thought this is a sign to take this off the drafts and put it on the top shelf. And here I am talking about it. And I'm not even going to tease my thoughts here. I'm going to go straight into my conclusion, which is that it makes sense, but it also doesn't make sense. It makes sense when it's broken down logically, but it also makes no sense when it's broken down based on like the emotion-led or supposed emotion-led, supposed relationship that the sort of consumer, follower, subscriber has with the influencer. Let me explain. So on the logic side of things, when I tap into my marketing brain, the notion of someone unsubscribing to an influencer when they grow in their influence and in their affluence and in their lifestyle and therefore become unrelatable makes 100% sense. We talk about it all the time at work, and it's like a common customer life cycle mistake that some brands can make often because they focus on the customer that they have, the customer that may have come about by chance, intentionally, maybe both, because that customer is the most engaged and therefore that customer probably gives them the most profit. And so naturally, as a profit-seeking business, they're going to zone in on that customer, and they're going to figure out how they can get more from that customer and how they can acquire more of that same type of customer. But then they might focus on the customer as if the customer is static, and they fail to move along that customer's life cycle with them. So rather than growing with the customer outgrows them. Other companies might milk their customer all throughout their lifestyle and they grow with their customer, but then it's not that smart because if they just focus on that customer and that customer's life cycle, eventually that customer will die, and what you see is that the business dies with the customer. Think about AOL. If someone emails you and their email address ends in AOL.com, you're thinking, damn, you old. And then you get smarter companies who they'll focus on their customer, but they'll always focus on like a younger customer, younger demographic, always acquiring a younger demographic. The smart thing with that is that they can have that customer all through their long life cycle, plus they'll have all the other people who look to the younger generation to be hip and cool, and therefore the cycle will continue. So that's like from a marketing point of view, right? I can see how not knowing your customer, but like sort of outgrowing your customer or leaving your customer behind or switching off on your customer or not focusing enough on that customer. Do you know what I mean? There's so many different ways to look at it. I can see how that can be a losing tactic because the customer is going to be like, I can't relate to this brand. This brand's values and my brand values don't align, and so I'm out. So yeah, that's the logic. But where this like comparison with like actual companies, where the comparison falls short, and I talk about this a bit in my parasocial relationships video, so check that out if you haven't. Where it falls short is that a brand-customer relationship is not the same as an influencer-follower relationship, even though the results and what we're seeing might argue that it is exactly the same. But to the parties involved, it's not the same. That's where it gets complicated. So what's actually happening, let's say in the mind of the influencer, what's happening is that they're not seeing their followers as customers, understandably. They might be seeing them as friends or supporters. Or they might be like, no, these are consumers, they're consuming my content, they're here for a reason, but not quite as cold as like a brand customer. It's a bit more personal, is a bit more of a softer edge. The follower/subscriber, on the other hand, might see the influencer not as a brand or a company that they're receiving a product or service from, but actually as a pseudo blank. And I say blank because I feel like that can vary. They might see them as a friend, as an advisor, as a political leader, as a religious leader in some cases, as a mentor, as a parent. If we want to get into that, let me know if you want a video about that. But yeah, I feel like that is the kind of relationship that, regardless of what the facts are, in the mind of the parties involved, it's not as black and white as customer, brand. They see the followers or they see the influencers as blank, what I've just described. And we can talk a lot about why there might be some issues with that, but obviously the main point of this video is that a lot of people are saying there's a disconnect, and that disconnect happens at the level or the point which somebody feels that the influencer is no longer relatable. So why is relatability so damn important for a lot of people to be following or to be supporting or to be subscribing to an influencer? Psychology tells us that we like people similar to us for so many reasons. But interestingly, or actually, obviously, there's a difference between us actually having similarities with someone, which is known as actual similarities, and us just believing that we have a lot in common with someone, which is known as perceived similarity. And psychology tells us that the less information we have about a person, the more that actual similarity will affect how much we like them. That makes sense? So there's been studies that showed that, like, when reading about a stranger, finding out that they have a lot in common with you, like more in common with you, made, like, it boosted the amount that they liked that stranger versus how much it actually mattered if they actually met and knew the stranger. Well, they're not a stranger, but you get what I mean, if they actually met and knew the person. Sounds a lot like the influencers we've never met in real life. Interesting. Because in long-term situations, studies have shown that, well, like when somebody actually knows the person, like inside out, so romantic relationships, friendships, families, actual liking, so how much you have in common with that person matters way less. So for example, my husband, yeah, we're opposites. So if I had read about him on paper, let's say before I'd even met him and he was a stranger, the amount that we actually have in common would have, the relatability, you could say, would have actually made me probably not like him, because I'm like, we don't have anything in common. Whereas me actually having met him innocently, randomly, got to know him, now I guess know him inside out, I know that we don't have lots and lots in common, but the amount of actual similarities matter less because we have a deeper connection, versus if he was a stranger or if I just met him, the amount we have in common, our actual likeness or relatability, would have mattered more. Makes sense? I just find that interesting. So if an increase in actual likeness, relatability, makes us like an influencer or somebody we don't know, a stranger, even more, then of course, as they grow, as they evolve, as they change, as they adapt, we might lose interest or lose affection towards them. But then interestingly, psychology, what this study or this thing is telling us is that if in those early stages of being introduced to that influencer and you love them and they're great, if in that early stages for some reason you actually became real life friends with them, like taking it offline and you were real life friends with them, them growing, them evolving, them changing would have had little to no effect on you and the way you feel about them and your affection towards them and your desire to like unsubscribe because they're not relatable. Interesting, isn't it? And it makes sense because if you think about it, if your real life friends leveled up in life, if they got new jobs, they got promotions, got more money, started living a different lifestyle, I doubt, well, some people might, but I doubt most of us would feel any type of way. We'd be happy for them, we'd be excited, we'd be like, yes, amazing. We would not like check out and unsubscribe to their life. Which brings me back to my old broken record saying, which is that influencers, say it with me now, are not your friends. In the same way that your offline friends are your friends, yeah? Do you get what I'm saying? Because all the parties involved don't treat each other the way friends do. So we should define what we mean by friends. There's also another side to this they're no longer relatable sort of trend that I'm seeing that I think we need to address, because the usual theme that I see theming is that the influencer is no longer relatable specifically because of their financial status. In other words, they got rich. They're no longer relatable. I'm out. I rarely hear people say they're not relatable anymore because they've changed their life view slightly, or they're no longer relatable because when I met them, they were single and now they have a whole family, or they're no longer relatable because this person was a student and now they're not a student. Do you know what I mean? Like, I rarely hear that. If anything, those sort of changes and evolutions, like normal life evolutions, tend to make the OGs, subscribers, and everybody sort of stay and follow you on the journey, and it kind of helps your channel. Whereas, interestingly, correct me if I'm wrong, but the only time I've heard people talk about this trend of like, this person's no longer relatable, I'm out, is often, if not always, because of their financial status, because they've got more money now, and more money visibly. So you see that their house has changed. The background of their videos is they're living in this mansion now. They got a new car. You can see that they're wearing designer. So it's like visible cues of them becoming more affluent in life. And I think, you know where I'm going with this. We definitely need to check our hearts, because I do think there could be some jealousy involved there. Because words like bougie or out of touch tend to float around. And to me, it's sometimes giving insecurities. Again, I talked about this a bit in my Keeping Up with the Joneses video. And I understand that it can be, whether you want to admit it or not, it can be hard seeing your fave go from your tax bracket to a new tax bracket, and you're still in that tax bracket, and it can make you feel bad about your situation. I just think, I'm not saying that's always the case, but I do think we should check ourselves. I always say question everything except nothing. So just some food for thought. And then there's also this theory, and guys, you know I love to make up a theory, yeah, but I believe this theory to be true 100%. I don't have a name for it, but I see it often, and I feel like it's best described visually in a graph. So picture this. So on the x-axis of this graph sits the influencers' reach in numbers. It's subscribers, followers, whatever. That's on the x-axis, right? And on the y-axis sits the followers, the subscribers, their affection towards the influencers. So we could put words in there like love or humanity, praise, just their positive or negative, their feelings towards that influencer, right? So you got the influencer's reach on the x, and you got the affection towards that influencer on the y-axis. And what I tend to see almost always is that, maybe not on an individual level, but like for the most part, as the influencer's reach starts to grow, the affection that they receive starts to decline. So when they have 1,000 subscribers, it's like, oh my gosh, you're so great, you're so underrated, oh my gosh, I love you. And then as they grow, it's like, oh, cancelled, oh, she did this thing that I don't like, oh, she's unrelatable, oh, out of touch, oh, bougie, oh, unsubscribed. So there's a negative or an inverse relationship between the followers' affection towards the influencer and the influencer's growth and reach in numbers. And I guess it makes sense when you are, well, it doesn't make sense, but I get it. Like, it, as someone's bigger and open to more people, they're going to be open to more criticism, they're going to be less humanized, I think, as well, is a big part of it. Like the way that we don't humanize celebrities, but you humanize your next door neighbor, even though they're both human. So I think a lot of that plays into it. So it does make sense. It's just very interesting, and I see it all the time. Sometimes I get it because people change over time. Money, fame can change people, and so the negative feedback that they're getting can be justified. And then sometimes I'm like, nah, this don't make no sense to me. And it can happen the other way around. Like, influencers can be like, yeah, my family, you're my friends, all the while their actions are not reflecting that they actually care about their subscribers or their followers. Yeah, it's an interesting one. So to conclude, liking a creator or an influencer because they relate to you makes 100% sense. Psychology tells us we like people that are like us. I get it. Like, I get it. It makes sense. Also, unsubscribing, unfollowing an influencer because you no longer can relate to them, and that lack of relatability is just not making you enjoy their content anymore. It's making you dislike them, whatever it might be. That also makes 100% sense. A few things I think are not okay, in my opinion. One of them is like labeling an influencer as unrelatable, out of touch, whatever, because as if it's a negative, but really it's just deep-rooted jealousy and insecurity on your part, I feel like you could have just left subscribes and walked away quietly. But I'm talking to the people who make a thing of calling people out for not being relatable, when really that might be the case, but also you need to check your heart as well, you know? And I guess the main thing I want to say in this video, similar to my parasocial relationships video, is that we have to be really honest. Both influencers and creators have to be really honest about the emotive relationship that they have with one another, because the confusion or the upset or the disconnect comes when someone's saying stuff like, I love you, I support you, or expressing in any kind of way that they would express to a friend in real life or a family member or a loved one. But that love and that admiration and all that closeness that they portray on both sides isn't reflected, because then when an influencer does glow up, level up, whatever, they become unrelatable. When your real life friend was to do that in real life, that's not the response that you would have. And it's like similar to the parasocial relationships video. You're saying, I love you, you're our bestie, you're my friend. But actually, when it comes to correcting them for their mistakes, you're cancelling them, which is not what you do with your real life. So my point here is, there lies the problem. If we were just able to look inwardly and be honest with ourselves in all the things that we do, not bluntly honest, but what I mean is, like, if influencers were to be honest and say, you know, I want to make a career. Some people are. I've seen influencers like that. I want to make a career out of this. I'm making videos because I want to make a career out of this. I appreciate my subscribers because obviously without them, this is not possible, blah, 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 blah. But this is what I'm trying to do, blah, 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 blah. On the flip side, if the followers, the subscribers are also honest and being like, look, I follow you because your makeup is bomb and you're teaching me how to do my makeup, or I follow you because you're so entertaining and it entertains me, or I follow you because it boosts my ego, or I follow you because it makes my wardrobe look great. Like a true brand customer relationship, but obviously with that softer edge, because it's more humanized, because I'm watching a human on the screen, and therefore, yeah, maybe I do really like your personality, but the minute you stop entertaining me, I'm probably going to unsubscribe. If we were more honest with stuff like that, then we probably wouldn't maybe feel a type of way if an influencer became unrelatable. We would be able to just silently move on, unsubscribe and move on, because you don't owe anyone your subscription or your views. At the end of the day, it is a business. It is a whatever you watch them for. That is the business model, I guess. You can unsubscribe quietly without it having to be a political thing, but we're not being honest with ourselves about the relationships that we have with people and how we feel about them, and we are trying to make it a bit more human, I love you so much kind of relationship, when it might not be that way entirely, and there lies the problem. Yep, that's it. That's all I have to say on the topic. I hope that was clear, because I had to do roundabout things, but basically be honest. Influencers, be honest about what it is that you're trying to get from your subscribers. Maybe they're just facilitating your lifestyle and you have a little bit of love them and you appreciate them. That's great. Maybe you really do want to help them and maybe you want to die for them. That's great too. Subscribers, be honest about why you follow influencers, and then there wouldn't be this sort of unnecessarily political thing when people change, or when people leave, or when people unsubscribe, or when people get more money. We just enjoy ourselves, you know. We just have a good time on here on this platform. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments down below. And as always, like, comment, subscribe. As always, follow me on my Instagram, on my Twitter, on my Pinterest, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.